crypto industry? We briefly spoke about, a lot of the companies in the crypto industry, but what advice would you give any startups that are, trying to go mainstream, but kind of bridge the gap from crypto to mainstream?
I think one thing I would tell people to be, well, I mean, if you're in this space, you're obviously getting really passionate. And I think it was the same thing for us when we got started. It was almost like, are you going to go full-time crypto? Because there's a lot of people that along the way have kind of dabbled, and that tends to happen when there's not an easy path to monetization in any startup, but crypto specific, it's probably a little bit longer journey, outside of some of the exchanges that are really kind of sucking up a lot of the monetization in the space, especially just some of the bigger ones. I think the majority of the people in our space that are W-2 employees work for exchanges. It's over 50 to 60%, but probably more. So I would say just be cognizant of, starting something, being super lean at the beginning, doing something part-time, especially in today's world where, we've got unemployment. It's not just in the US, it's across the world. So it's like, you know, do that, start attending some of these webinars, start attending some of the things, get into the industry, but really just be ready to, figure maybe some product market fit out while you're doing something else, and you're going to have to potentially work a couple of things, and that's okay. It's not going to be super easy when you're doing like a high powered tech startup, even crypto or not. You're building for what is the future. You're building for the economy that's 5 to 10 years from now. You're not building for today. If you wanted to do that, you can just start a pizza shop and monetize tomorrow. There's demand there.
Right, right.
So it's like it's a different type of thing, and just be prepared for that. Also be prepared for like a longer journey. I think especially like the first time around when I was doing a startup, I kind of was like, I didn't know the timetables that well. I just kind of thought like, okay, I'm 25, like, how many years is this going to take or what am I going to do? And then you look at things like Uber in 2007, 2008, they were probably kicking the idea around even before that. And the technology wasn't there. And then it wasn't even until 5 years after that, really, that people out of San Francisco and some of the large cities even started to use it. So it's like, okay, if Uber's taking 4 years to go mainstream, 5 years to go mainstream, you have to be prepared to ride that,
Right,
and it's
right.
not a short journey. So it's like, I would say just get excited about that though, because what you're going to learn in the path and the ideas that you're going to get and the people you're going to meet along the way, like that's what the passion has to be. And then also don't overclock your processor, right? Like every day in a startup, every day could be the best and worst day of your life over and over and over again. It really can. You could
True.
wake up in the morning, Bitcoin could be
Yeah,
up
yeah.
20%. You had a couple of great calls, things are going good, and by the end of the day, one of your customers leaves and Bitcoin's down 30%,
Yep,
right? So it's like that's life though. So
yep.
don't overclock your body, your mind, and just stay even, and realize that if you don't stay even, then you're just going to get burnt out way too fast and you're going to get depressed, and it's going to be a really tough journey.
You said a few things that resonated, but like, you're building for tomorrow. And I think that also relates to, you're going to need funding. You're going to need funding. And I should say, before you're going to get funding, you're going to need a team that complements each other.
Yep.
Don't just partner up with your buddies that are exactly the same, that do exactly the same thing that you do, because it's not going to work. Like, everyone on our team does exactly something unique. And I can say for certain that any one of us can't do each other's job. Like,
Yeah.
we are very specific in what we do. What that led to was we were able to go to market without any funding. We were literally able to launch
Right.
part-time, doing this part-time without risking our day jobs, and leaving when the time was appropriate. And for us to keep doing this and to go full-time, yes, it meant Techstars. That gave us a little bit of money, a little bit, to get us through a little while, a few of us. And then you're going to need funding. And so, we initially partnered with Draper Gorin Home, Tim Draper, Alon Gorin, and Joseph Holm. They're amazing, and they get it. I'd say, there was a time when we were in Techstars, we were meeting with, what was it, 8 to 10 investors coming in every day, and you have to keep, every hour you're repitching your company, which actually is a really, really good exercise.
Yeah.
You learn exactly what resonates, and it's not all the same with every person you talk to. You have to figure out where they are in crypto. There's a lot of investors out there, like, we would meet and talk to, and they'd say, oh yeah, I think my brother bought a Bitcoin. Hold on, let me text him, see if he still owns the Bitcoin. They know nothing about crypto,
Yeah.
but they cut $1 million checks though all the time for, the Airbnb for dogs. Like they just don't
Yeah.
know crypto.
Yeah.
And so when we partnered with, Draper Goren Home came in, and it was like, they put on summits and conferences. They work with startups. They're like very savvy marketers. Pick your investors well.
Mm,
That's a big piece of advice. Don't just take a check from someone and then have them call you every day to ask you how much money you made yesterday.
yeah.
Like pick partners that are going to help grow your business. That's a huge deal when you're in an environment where you might not be completely profitable, or you might have, even worse, you might have no revenue at all for a long time, for years. So, but it takes time to build this stuff up. And then you got to realize, well, where is crypto in general, aside from your company, from a macro view, where exactly is crypto today? It's early. It's
Hmm.
still early. Even if you're someone that got in, 7, 8 years ago, it's early in 2020, extremely early. And so, considering the trajectory, the growth rate, the potential, you need partners that get it, that they're going to need to give you funding. You're going to need to support a team full time as much as you possibly can. And good luck with trying to ICO to do that. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of ICOs, I guess well, I've got one more question after this one, but I guess is a broad question. But how do you guys feel about ICOs? Obviously, it's a interesting way to crowdfund. Of course, there's IEOs and STOs, yada yada. I mean, how do you guys feel about some of these crowdfunding mechanisms?
I like them. I mean, I think that obviously they're like, you need to protect investors. I mean, obviously it's a free market. People can make their own decisions. I think it's really important to give um, people access to investment vehicles that, right now only potentially affluent investors, can invest in. I think it's super important to allow people to make decisions, but there needs to be some protection in place. Like there just does. I mean, if there's an average investor that has a 401k right now that invests in, broader markets, and someone's kind of managing it through a larger fund and they take a fee, you need some sort of protection around it. How does this person that has literally no idea what crypto is, but they need exposure to it, or they get left behind because their fiat currency is devaluing because everything else is going up, or they're printing too much? And so I like what it stands for. I mean, there's all these other crowdsourcing, equity raise type platforms that are out there that I think are really cool. But the speed at which you can raise and launch new ideas through a crowdsource ICO, if done correctly and legally, I think would be a really powerful thing that a lot of people would love to be a part of, even if it's a micro investment, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be, hey, I'm gonna dump like half my net worth into this random ICO of this thing I don't know. It's like, what if it's literally $5, right? But then you did 5,000 of those, right? So it's
Right.
like diversifying's always been important, right? And so it's like, if we could find a way, I think to make it easier for people and make it more transparent. And that's kind of part of what we're trying to do at Lunar Crush, is when these things come online, how do you value some of these things, and
Yeah.
how do you appropriately assess them?
there's one side of this. If I took the Bitcoin maximalist view here, I could say this is all crap. There should be no such thing as an ICO.
Right.
I think that's not realistic. It's not what the future looks like. There will be some form of digitized securities, of tokenization. I think the problem and the challenge becomes the track record that's been established so far with a lot of these ICOs. We see that there's been over 5,000 coins. 5,000. There probably would be 500,000 at some point.
Yeah.
But
Probably.
but that doesn't mean they're going to be worth anything.
Right.
So I think I take the standpoint of, let the market decide if these are legitimate or not, and establish a proper framework where everyone's happy. The challenge I see is, I can't imagine, these are things that transcend borders. I can't imagine any format that all countries will say, yep, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Even potentially any one,
Yeah.
because it transcends that one's borders.
Yep.
And so we run into this like regulatory problem. What are the guardrails? What's legal? What's not? I think if that's established, I love it. I love the idea of ICOs. I think it's great. If they're crap and garbage, let them go to zero.
Yeah.
If they've got something, I seem to recall Tezos, for example. Tezos did an ICO. I invested in their ICO, and I thought it was great. It was a great project. Still is. It's
Yeah, still
fantastic
is.
what they're doing. It's a really great project. They ICO'd, but for every one that's a Tezos, there's 1,500 that are like way down, and they're worth
Right.
nothing, and they have no max supply, and they just didn't establish the right rules. But is the market not deciding that it's crap
Right.
versus it's Tezos?
Yeah. I mean,
So
yeah.
I feel like let the market decide, but the problem still comes back to what is the regulatory framework to do this properly. I mean, even when we started our company, we were debating, should we do a token? There's a million and one scenarios that we think we can establish value for it. But is that something that makes sense? Wait a second, are we going to end up in a legal nightmare and blow millions of dollars just trying to legally get through doing that in the first place? We would. It didn't make sense for us. We still talk to people that are talking about doing ICOs. It blows my mind. Like, I'm like, where are you doing that, and how will the market be like receptive to that?
Yeah.
So I think, again, bottom line, it's a regulatory problem, but a really good idea.
Yeah, and I will agree with both of you on that. I think it's definitely cool in the way that you can, raise money, very quickly and globally, and actually be accessible to, pretty much anybody on the planet, barring a few exceptions. But I do obviously think, and yeah, I also like the fact that it's like the free market. Let it play out. Let people figure out, if this is crap or not. But also, I think we need to come up with better indicators of what value is in this industry in general. Like, we don't have, earnings reports necessarily from any of the cryptocurrencies in this industry, and you can just, pull up a white paper, or copy a white paper, and
Don't say who.
yeah, and yeah, so we're gonna have to figure out, how to actually evaluate a lot of these cryptocurrencies. And if we do figure that out, I'm completely fine with ICOs. Now, IEOs are a little weird just because of, we know exchanges, some exchanges aren't exactly, honest and whatnot. And the process of getting on some of these exchanges for IEOs is a little strange. I think even ICOs seem to be a better mechanism than IEOs just because of the way, how centralized exchanges are in this industry. So I do like it. I just think we have to figure out a better way of evaluating cryptocurrencies in this industry.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fair.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So this is not financial advice, but what are your predictions before, after, and 1 year ahead of now for Bitcoin price predictions?
Well, I don't know if I want to make an exact price prediction,
Yeah.
say, but the way that I kind of think about these halvings is it's the built-in anti-inflationary. It's a way to increase value and supply in a very interesting way. And technically there is no difference, right? Like the halving really, I mean, outside of, our miners profitable, quote unquote, is what people, that's like the one sticking point on this. And it's almost like, well, it doesn't matter, right? Like, if the price needs to go down a little bit before they get profitable again, does the hash rate fall, when some miners go away? Like, we're solving some of this. Like, there's big companies that are solving some of these things, shooting satellites into space to keep the network going. Like, there's a lot of things around this that I think influence like what the value is. But at the end of the day, the price of Bitcoin is purely around its store value.
Yep.
And its function. And its store value and its function has not changed since the inception, the first day, the first second, and into the future. It's doing the exact same function that
Right.
it's going to do now into the future. And so I think that, as if anything, all the halving does is get a little bit more marketing out there, get people talking about it, which you would think increase the attention, which would increase the demand. And then if the supply is going down, you would think that, price would move. But as we've learned about, psychology and human psychology, doesn't work that way, right?
Nope.
Markets don't always
they're not always rational.
Yeah, buy the rumor, sell the news is like, that's a real thing, and that happens a lot. And I think that that's something that people need to be cognizant of. So, but what I would say is, we wouldn't be in this industry and working towards, some of these things if we didn't think that there was still a lot of value to Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptocurrencies that are out there.
Very good points.
I have a little different view than you probably usually hear. I view this like, so if I took Bitcoin, I look at it as macro trends. It's attached to macro trends. It's attached to macro events. I look at altcoins as more or less startups that are attached to micro trends. And in many scenarios, they are captive to Bitcoin's success or not. Some move different. But if I look at Bitcoin as being attached to macro trends, it's sort of a method of getting off of that macro environment. And so it's more or less, how much are you willing to pay to get off of the macro environment? And right now, the macro environment is printing endless money. The macro environment is shut down. The macro environment has like skyrocketing unemployment rates. And so you have to ask yourself, not what is the price of Bitcoin going to do tomorrow? Because some guy on Twitter drew a line on a chart and he tells me I should buy or sell. And that is the wrong perspective to have. The right perspective to have
Very
is,
true.
let's never sell, because by the time you want to sell, you won't want to sell because it's better money. And that's a long ways from here. You're in the hundreds of thousands or millions for that to be the case. And if that happens, like think of where the dollar is. The dollar is garbage.
Yeah.
Like and if Bitcoin's in the millions,
Yep.
it means that you're not just going to dump it because you made some money and you're going to go back into these quality dollars. So the question just becomes to me, how much are you willing to pay to get off of the current macro environment? And to me, it looks like that macro environment is weakening.
Yep.
And the amount that you're going to pay for Bitcoin is going to go up as a result.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, if you're comparing it to money, and if you look at most of the world, including oil, that's a fun topic,
Oh yeah.
is denominated in dollars because you can only buy oil with US dollars.
Right.
That's going to change.
Yep.
But if you look at all of that together and you realize just how messed up things are becoming, it seems to me just in general, longer term backing out, you're going to pay exponentially more for Bitcoin. And I don't mean 5 to 10x, I mean way more.
I agree.
So, and even a 5 to 10x would be a really great return, but 10x is still only 100 grand from here. That's not that far away when you really break it down. And even then, you don't have mainstream adoption. You're a long ways away. Even at $100,000, it's going to go way higher than that then.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends of like, maybe it's not Bitcoin, it's something else. And I'm certainly open to listen, but I haven't seen anything else. I'm way into investing. I can't think of a better investment than Bitcoin right now. Just
I agree.
period.
I agree.
There's nothing. And maybe there will be someday, but if I look at every single market, I mean, you're going to invest in oil. Is housing a better bet than Bitcoin? Which stock is going to outperform Bitcoin? Can you tell me? Like, what we're going to buy barrels of oil and store them in our backyard because it's cheap. I mean, what exactly is better? I don't think it exists.
The problem is most of these assets are all tied to the dollar. I mean, for example, like you said, oil. Oil is directly tied to the price of dollar, the petrodollar. Obviously, there's dollars, lots of dollars in the stock market. Bitcoin is an asset all on its own. And, as we saw just yesterday, Paul Tudor Jones thinks Bitcoin, resembles gold in the 70s. We know what happened to gold after, the Nixon shock and when the US dollar was finally removed from the gold standard. So there's a lot of exciting things going on right now. And I think people are starting to see Bitcoin is actually probably more than a digital gold. It's really so much more. It's an open source technology. I mean, it's kind of wild. I mean, it could be like the foundation and the, the infrastructure for a lot of, different projects, companies. I mean, it's really crazy, how much value Bitcoin has. And, over time, obviously people are going to have to figure that out, and they're going to, because, they're going to see the price go up. So
it's funny. Like you mentioned, like gold, for example, same thesis to a degree, right? A lot of people are saying store value, gold, Bitcoin. All right, you can own a little bit of both. Recently, they needed to ship gold to New York. They couldn't.
Yeah.
That affects that completely destabilizes prices if you don't have the liquidity, the volume, the ability to receive. Like Bitcoin, I could sell you some right now, and you can pay me right now, and
literally like QR code, just Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's important. The other day, I mean, Bitcoin Cash, for example, I was on another. It was the blockchain summit, whatever it was last week. It was online. And Roger Ver held up QR codes. And if you had the Bitcoin.com app, you could hold it up, and then you get like $5 in Bitcoin Cash just immediately.
That's
just
funny.
by scanning the QR code. I thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's like, try doing that with gold. Am I going to ship you a bar or are you going to buy the gold ETF where you don't actually hold anything? It's not meant for 2020.
Yep.
I get the story, but we've seen lots of debates of like Peter Schiff and Pomp. I loved that one. That was
Oh
pretty
yeah,
cool.
that's a good one.
And Peter Schiff, every time the price of Bitcoin goes down, we love this one. He shows up as an influencer on our site
Yeah.
because he's trolling the Bitcoiners.
Yep.
Not because he's bullish, but because he's trolling and gets a lot of engagement back.
Yep.
I just ran both your guys' conversation through the Lunar Crush's analysis, and it's bullish to very or extremely bullish on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Good indication.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would you guys prefer, or do you prefer remote work or in-person work? I think I know the answer to this question.
I think both have value. I think what this did with COVID-19 is really kind of pushed society into the future a little bit with the way that we all should be working.
Yep.
I think there's a huge value of sitting face to face with someone and really kind of having an amazing conversation and understanding where they're coming from and really getting a feel for it. I mean, communication is such a hard thing, and you could say, when you say something to someone, it might not be the same thing that they hear, right? Like they interpret things different. And so more can get lost, I think, when you're constantly working remote. But I think that people need this option, especially, we live in the greater Los Angeles area. We live down in Orange County, California. And it's like, when we go to meetings up in Los Angeles or we want to go somewhere, I mean, that you are dedicating a day
Yeah.
in order to get up there, meet, park, the time in the car, like all of these things, like your back hurts, like all of these things that it's just a lot. And so it's like, if you can remove some of those things and you don't need to be in person, I think that this is kind of the future, and you're going to see a lot of happier people working remote. I even think that there's potentially space, if companies would be open to it, where I think a lot of time is wasted in travel going to these offices, but I also think there's a lot of distractions at the offices. And so I think that potentially people could have two jobs.
Yeah.
And two office jobs, work for two companies. Like, why is that not an okay thing? And if I'm a company and I pay someone, maybe I'm paying them 30% less to do this exact same job because they are really just wasting a lot of time being there. They can go find another job that would pay them maybe 70% of that salary. Now that person is actually making 140% of what they were making before, and the companies are actually saving money, but that person gets to output more value. And so I think that this future of work is going to look a lot different, but I think it's like, for example, like a podcast like this, right? Like if we're all in the same room interacting differently and everything else, like I think there's some quality to that, but I think that if we're getting 90% of the way there by being in remote work and all of the bad things are being taken away, then it's like, this is probably what the future should look like.
I agree.
It's interesting because we had an office and we were going to it 3 or 4 days a week. Great office, is amazing. And we decided just randomly, what was it? It was March. And we said, you know what? We should just work from home for now because this coronavirus thing might get big. And by chance, it was like a week later, like everything was shut down.
Wow.
And so it's kind of weird because if you would have asked, how is it working from home? Like a week after that, I would have said, this is scary. Like, crypto's going straight down, stock market's going straight down. I'm here, everyone's losing their job. All these people are getting sick and some are unfortunately dying. And it's crazy times, right? Like right when this hit, like early April was rough.
Yeah.
And then started to realize, all right, you need to keep moving. We got to keep moving. And maybe, just maybe, this is the best time in history to do a startup. Maybe. And so what's happened is we've done nothing but grow.
Yeah.
Like it's been crazy. And maybe it's because we're in crypto, but like, just for example, a stat off the top of my head, we were adding in like end of March, beginning of April, like 25 to 30 followers a day on Twitter. We're doing over 100 followers a day on Twitter now.
Wow.
And so like our traffic has gone up on some days 4x versus the beginning of March. And so it's like our time on site has doubled in the past few weeks.
That's awesome.
Like
I got a lot more time.
Like all of our I mean, and what's also really, really cool is weekend days are almost busier than weekdays. In fact, many cases they are, especially Saturday. These are days that if you were ever looked at web analytics, you'd see that your weekend traffic falls off because people are going out and having fun and living their life. Mm-hmm. People are now spending more time on the weekends at home. And so
Yep.
there's some fascinating, interesting, different kinds of trends that we see. I mean, just personally, I'm getting more done, and I feel like my own mental health is really way better. Exercising more, like getting more done. I don't know. No complaints other than, yeah, it'd be nice to have more face to face
Yeah,
with more people. But
I've heard
yeah,
like some of the solutions. If you wanted to have like a little, like, for your team, if you want to have a little get together like every week or something like that, but everybody else works at home most of the week. That's cool. I mean, that works. I mean, I don't feel like anybody really wants to go to the office every single day and have to
no,
go through traffic. I mean, and plus people get to spend a lot more time with their families and just
yep.
I don't know, just relax. I just feel like this is actually the next logical progression for any industry that can, or any business that can do work at home. And I feel like most companies they just didn't know it, and now they do because they've been forced to realize that. So I totally agree with that, and I bet you guys are have more time with family and whatnot.
It's been good. I'll tell you another thing that's been on my mind, at least, is like, okay, everyone's been locked up for 2 months now. Some things are starting to open up, especially around here. You're starting to see more traffic on the roads. Some
Yep.
restaurants are kind of opening that were completely shut.
Yep.
Some stores are kind of starting to get there. And when everyone goes out, it's not going to be the same world they left. And like, I'll give an example. What if you worked at a mall, a local mall near where you live, right?
Yep.
And you worked in retail. When you go back, a big piece of those, like that that foot traffic is gone.
Yeah.
On top of that, a huge chunk of those stores will just never open again.
Yep.
They're done. And so it's not going to be the same world. The unemployment rate is off the charts.
Yeah.
It's not the same world, no matter what it is you do. If you're in New York, imagine the friction of just going to the office, of taking the subway, of, are they going to measure your temperature? Are your
Yeah.
desks going to be spaced 6 feet apart or more? How do you actually meet with people? Do you touch the door handle going into that room like you used to? Like, all these decisions have so much friction versus, gosh, we're already getting more productivity just having everyone work from home. Why exactly do we have this big office again?
Right.
So I just think it's a different world with a lot more friction when this opens up, and a lot more than people realize. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, just even flying is a nightmare right now. I
Yep.
won't get on a plane, but I keep hearing from other people, like, there's like fights on planes. Don't sit next to me.
Yeah.
Airlines overpacking the planes. Like, there's all people wearing gas masks for 6 hours on a flight. I mean, like,
Not fun.
not fun.
No,
No.
it wasn't fun when as it was. Now it's really not fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, like, what happens to all that extra office space when a lot of these businesses realize, hey, we don't really need to have an office. We could just have everybody work at home. That's a really interesting question.
I mean, maybe they repurpose some of it. I mean, maybe, and you know what? Like, we have to be willing to be wrong on this too. Like, I'm definitely in the camp that I think more people like it at home. I mean, maybe it's 50-50, but it's like, we could be wrong. I've heard some stories of people. I mean, in Georgia and Atlanta, like, some of the restaurants are fine, like, they're doing okay. Like, people are going. So I think, as we get more data, if we find out, 2 months from now that the, mortality rate of COVID-19 for people under the age of 50 that have no pre-existing conditions, like, if we find out that that's like, and once we get more testing and people have antibodies, and maybe this takes a lot more time, like, maybe we don't do testing, I don't know, but it's like, if we find out that subset of people and the mortality rate is extremely low, like, we're talking like 6 sigma 0.00001 or something like that, like those are like heavy spenders, those are the people that are going to restaurants, things will come back a little bit faster. I'm just worried that there's not going to be the same restaurant base there for them, right? Like, some of the big companies are the ones that are kind of outlasting everyone, but I mean, even really solid steakhouses and places that have brand names, they're going to be struggling, and they're going to be closing their doors soon. And I think that the time period in which it gets to where we have a lot of people going back, I don't think we're going to be able to bridge that, because I don't think people think about why people go to restaurants. They go to be seen, they go to have a good meal, they go out to
Right.
meet people, and restaurants cannot operate at 50% revenue.
No.
They barely like, most restaurants go out of business. They need to operate at full capacity. Like, we're
Exactly.
talking just crushing it. And so it's like, there is no scenario in which most of these restaurants survive this. And so that, on the outside of this, the other side of this, I think that's going to be super interesting. And even when you look at the unemployment rate, and they're like, and this is why the market outside of like the Fed printing everything known to man and like just rates going negative and timing announcements of unemployment, it's like getting pretty silly at this point. And they're like, well, most of the people are just in the hospitality business and that will come back. And it's like, no, there's still millions of jobs in manufacturing and millions of
Mm-hmm.
jobs in financial services. And if you would have just looked at that alone compared to 2008 when we lost the jobless claims report was 623,000 was what it maxed out at back in 2000 and I think 9 or 8. And it's like, okay, 2 million people in services jobs lost their job, like just in coronavirus. If you took rid of everything else outside of that, that would still be a huge deal. Yet the market is just shrugging everything off. And so I think what has happened over the last maybe 30 days and the optimism and the hopium that's out there is might be even more negative if this does go back down, because people
Yeah.
are going to be like more defeated than they would be if we would have just kind of held steady and did what we needed to do. But I think we just don't have enough data yet.
Yeah.
You know what though? I got a fun story for you guys, and it happened last night. So we have a friend, Danielle. She owns a local French restaurant, and it's amazing. And it's called Maison in Dana Point here. And she learned to innovate. Like the food's great. She has like a coffee thing to go in there, and it's a sit down restaurant, and it's like really good French food. And she partnered with a friend of hers that was like this. He's a master sommelier, which by the way, there's only like 150 of them in the United States. A master sommelier, wine expert. And they did last night. They did a at-home wine tasting, and
Oh,
she
that's
made
cool.
like food charcuterie boards, and he selected these 4 Spanish wines, and they had people come to all these people's home, and they delivered a box of food, and they did a Zoom call last night. And
That's cool.
used to say it was a fun morning this morning, waking up after that. But it was probably better than any dinner I've ever had. And we sat behind our computer. This master sommelier is walking us through every aspect of the wines and where they were made and this and that. And there were about 350 people on this call. And everyone was interacting and chatting with each other and making fun of each other. And it was fun. It was really fun. But I go and say, like, restaurants have shut down, and they say, okay, great, well, to go is good. And the restaurants go, oh, well, that must be all that we can do. No, you could innovate. I mean,
Right.
all they did last night was use a Zoom account with 300 plus people on, one sommelier. It was like $100 for 4 bottles of wine and food. They sold it out. They're probably
Wow.
going to do 100 of these things now. And so all that did was it required some innovation, just as Grubhub
Mm-hmm.
and Uber Eats applied a little bit. But I've got a lot of complaints about those. Half the time they're not even delivering you the right food and
Right.
whatever. But this is a different way to do what they used to do that perhaps may be better. And so
Yeah.
I think the places that not only survive but thrive in the future learn to kind of say, okay, well, the world is what it is. What can we do? Not just go, oh, poor me, it didn't work. No one cares. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out how to innovate and how to change. It doesn't mean you can't operate a restaurant profitably and grow. It just means you have to figure out the right way of doing it. And that applies to every business.
Yeah.
You know, it could be
Exactly.
deliveries are a bigger deal. It could be, I don't know. That's up
That's
to
the beauty of
others to figure out.
startups. I mean, that's like,
Right.
we think we saw Airbnb come out of 2008. Well, now, Airbnb, for example, is going to have a lot of problems. We'll have to see what is
Yeah.
the next innovation. But I think we're also going to see a lot of competition in the food delivery business as well. A lot of new startups are going to come out of this, and a lot of new innovation, like you said, with just presenting a simple Zoom call and just doing cool stuff like that. I mean, that sounds really, really cool. I think a lot of people would enjoy that.
Well, and also one other point on things like Uber and Airbnb, they haven't lived through a downturn yet. This is their first one. This is their first real genuine round of layoffs. The companies that are born out of this are born out of hard times. They're strong. And so all of those companies, and also the VC money has been there for those guys to grow in the billions of dollars in market cap. So it's a different environment. The companies that are starting now are going to grow to be huge companies. Happens every time there's a downturn.
Just par for the course. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up now. And so I want to let you guys have a chance to highlight anything, specific that you guys are working on at Lunar Crush, or anything that you guys want to highlight in general. And then this is a time for you guys to just like explain where's your social media, where's the best way to find more information about you guys, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I could just, find us at Lunar Crush on Twitter, lunarcrush.com. I mean, you can come to our site and it's free, sign up and you're going to get all of the metrics there right now. So it's no cost to go and sign up and get everything. We don't blast you with a bunch of email. We give you like an insights email once a day that kind of keeps you up to date on everything, and we're always doing a great job of posting on Twitter and getting everything out there. So, if you want to, learn a little bit more about the crypto space and dive a little bit deeper, into some of these projects and get insights that are about community and social, and find people, we look at influencers and the people that are out there that are talking about these projects specifically. And so the people that are getting a lot of engagement